On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are talking all about Discovery 211, Perpetual Infinity. Right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
What's happening today, Dave?
Oh, man, I don't know. I've had a busy week. Busy couple of weeks.
Well, that can be good or bad. How are you feeling about it?
Well, I'm okay. Work has been specifically busy, and DC on Screen has been pretty freaking busy. So, we actually, Jason and I just went and saw the advanced screening of Shazam.
Oh, yeah? How is it?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Great, man.
It's, a lot of humor, a lot of heart. It actually did better in the advanced screenings than Aquaman did.
Cool.
So,
just like the reviews were better?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, across the board, actually way better received than Aquaman was, even though Aquaman has made, over $1 billion now. So, I don't know. They got a good 3 weeks before Infinity War comes out. But yeah, we've just had a lot of episodes. We've got we're prepping for an 80th anniversary Batman special. So.
Yeah. When does it come out? Thursday? Shazam?
Shazam? The 5th or the 4th.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go check that out. I'm excited about it. Don't spoil me, bro.
I won't.
All right, let's get into Star Trek. You want to throw that summary at us?
Sure. CBS All Access summary. Burnham receives the reunion she's been longing for, but it doesn't go quite as she imagined. Georgiou and Tyler sense a disturbing change in Leland.
Yeah, they did.
So, I just want to bring it out. Are we thinking that he's the Borg? Are we thinking that Control and Leland are the Borg?
That scene definitely seemed Borg-like. I mean, he got injected with what looked like nanites. They went into his bloodstream and then took him over.
And he even said, what was it? Struggle is pointless? That sounds like resistance is futile to me.
That definitely does. I actually did not catch that. So, yeah, but I did write in my notes. Is this the Borg? Because it definitely seems like it could be the Borg. Now, I don't know what they're going to... Because obviously it's also Control. Now, are they going to say that the Borg sent Control back in time to, or the Borg took over Control maybe at some point?
I hope they don't go that deep with it. Or, not deep. I don't mind depth. That's what I want is depth. I really hope they don't, jump forward or try to say that, the Borg sent this back. I don't want it to be a paradox. I want it to be, the Borg are a result of man's folly, of Section 31's folly. That's what I want it to be. If they do it.
That's interesting. So maybe Control in the deep future somehow creates the Borg. Maybe this Control, some version of Control ends up being sent out to the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah. And if that is the case, I feel like they're setting it up with this, and I don't know. Forgive me, I'm not a scientist, and the technology sounded a bit, I don't know, sci-fi-y, a little bit janky to me, the way they talked about it, but messing around with the perpetual infinity thing, and they're basically doing what the Flash has been doing this year, is just everything is just dark matter. We could just use the dark matter. Okay.
Yeah, we can use a science fiction thing that we don't really know what it does, so we can make it do whatever we want it to do.
Both series has specifically been going on about dark matter this season.
Yeah.
Actually, for 2 seasons for the Flash.
Yeah, see, I haven't seen either of those seasons yet, so I guess I have missed out on a lot of dark matter.
Yeah. So anyway, I suspect they might jettison control to the Delta Quadrant somehow. I don't know. But you know that the suit sending Michael's mother 950 years into the future, that's conspicuously close to the time frame that that episode of the Short Treks Calypso happened in. It's 1,000 years in the future.
That is true. Good point.
I saw someone on Twitter was pointing out that the little cameras they were using, that they were setting up, looked like the little interface for the AI.
Oh, it kind of did.
Calypso.
Kind of did. You know, another thing that I've been considering about this whole Calypso thing, you know, they said that he's watching those cartoons in his ship, and he says, you know, I forget, the Vidraish are watching this or something, or how could the Vidraish like to watch this stuff or whatever? And so we assumed they were humans, but what if they're just an AI that is a descendant of humanity, and it has humanity's archives or whatever in there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this might get a little into, you know, the issues with like J.K. Rowling coming out and saying all this stuff about characters and things and Harry Potter that weren't actually in the canon. But Michael Chabon said that the Vidraish were the Federation.
Oh, I know. But, you know, they said it was a bastardization of the word Federation.
A bastardization
so
of the Federation.
So what if it is because the Section 31's control is built to protect the Federation. What if it goes forth into the future protecting what it believes to be what's left of the Federation, which is itself? You know, I don't know. It's a long shot, but I just thought of that a couple episodes ago. That, like, what if the being that he is, whatever the beings he's fighting is in the future, are actually like some descendant of this AI? Mm-hmm. Because that would also make sense why they would have that Betty Boop cartoon without it actually being humans split into two factions.
Yeah.
So breaking down the episode a little bit, a few things I had. One thing I thought was weird, in the very first scene, they're sitting and talking to Burnham about supernovas and everything. She's not that young, and they're talking about the time crystal right in front of her. Which I thought was weird, because it's like this top secret thing, and she said last episode she knew nothing about it. They were just scientists. And they don't even call it a time crystal, they just call it the crystal. But it still seems weird to have conversations about your top secret time travel experiments that are going on right in front of your daughter, who is clearly the age that she could tell her friends or... Yeah.
You know, as long as they were vague, and they did seem to be vague about it in front of her, like, I don't know. I don't think I would have even paid attention if I was that kid. You know what I mean? Like, I would be like, I'm interested in my little supernova here. They're just talking about work.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's possible. It just seems a little...
It did strike me too, though.
Yeah, like the Burnham would... I don't know. Weird. I thought that... I totally called it Leland being the voice of control. Last episode, I was like, they could just use him as a... I was thinking it was going to be the hologram, but they ended up going full Borg and just taking over his body.
Yeah, and by the way, all those little veins and things on his face totally looked Borg.
Totally looked Borg. That whole injection looked directly out of First Contact. Like an updated, better CGI and better, you know, and better technology from the Borg, but it definitely looked like First Contact completely. Sonequa Green, what's her middle name?
Martin.
Sonequa Martin Green. Yeah, she's kind of acting her ass off this episode.
Dude, her and the lady from The Wire.
Yeah. They're both really killing it this episode.
Absolutely. Like, it's one of those things where I kind of was a little sad because they did such a good job that it did make me feel something, but I kind of like, I felt like there was, I wish there was a little more setup. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of wanted, like, more. I felt like there was a lot of exposition, a lot of like talkie in reference to like stuff they were setting up for future episodes, when I really just wanted like a quiet episode where we get like her 950 years in the future and her like dealing with having to go back and how she got, because she like she tried to go back an hour and accidentally went 950 years in the future. Mm-hmm. Let me see how she's figuring out this suit a little more, instead of just saying like, well, now I can go to precise times in history without. Well,
that's the thing. She can go now to precise times in history, but it always brings her. She's always somehow anchored 950 years in the future. They didn't really explain why she's anchored there. Like,
oh, I mean, they said Newton's, whatever third law or whatever it was.
Yeah, but then why didn't she immediately boomerang back 950 years?
I don't know.
That doesn't make sense. Like throwing out it has to be something related to the way the suit works for it to boomerang you. If it didn't boomerang you the first time, like it's not a universal law because it didn't happen every time.
I mean, they tried to throw that out there, but I mean, I don't know what I'm not a scientist, but I don't think being a scientist would help me here.
Right. You have to build a universe that makes sense. And on Discovery, they're way too quick to like just gloss over the things that would make the plot make sense. And there's so often things that would make it make sense. We just need like a little bit. We need a little bit of care put to that,
I feel like like old Star Trek, and by old Star Trek, I mean like Voyager and TNG. I feel like they did the opposite, where they would sort of eschew emotion and like really try to get their science advisors to like make that sound like it was a thing.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely.
And Discovery does the opposite, where like I feel like they just try to like gloss over it and get by it as quickly as possible so that we don't think about it too much. They're like, look at this incredibly emotional scene.
Well, it's kind of it's the Lost problem in my mind. It's the we're only going to care about the characters. We're not going to answer the questions that everyone's curious about. And it's because it's just, to me, it's the same kind of a problem. And it's because in my mind, I think Lost is a different case, because I think Lost started out that way. It was all about the characters. It was all about the mystery was supposed to be a backdrop to put these characters through something. But then the kind of story they were telling with all these science fiction elements drew in the kind of fandom, like me and you, that wanted to know what was going on that freaking island. Like, we wanted to know about the time travel and the this and the that. And then I think that's why you have such a negative reaction to the ending by some. I know, not by you.
Not anymore.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you've come to terms with it, and I have too, for the most part. Like, I don't really have a strong opinion about Lost having a bad ending, but I understand the negative reaction when it happened, because everyone was like, "No, I was watching this." They were watching for a different kind of thing than they ended up getting, and I think that happens. The fandom gets a thing in their head they want. And I don't want this show, Discovery. I don't want all of Star Trek to just be about canon, and like, I want it to be about emotion. I want it to be about characters, but you have to undergird it with a structure that makes sense.
What do you think the chances are that this entire season is about fixing canon?
I don't know. I would put it at 20%.
Because I say that because, Kurtzman has been in the news consistently saying we're syncing up with canon. You're going to see how we sync up with canon. We have this whole Michael Burnham was supposed to die in the Forge situation. Now we have, her mom. They're saying time is out of joint. There's Spock is over here quoting Hamlet. Time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. You have
Hamlet. Hell yeah.
I hated that too.
I liked it. That was one of my quotes.
But we have Burnham, Dr. Burnham, saying, that the whole reason she moved those people was to test and see if she could change time. She's seen Michael die 100 times, and she'll see her die 100 times more. She's watched, Georgiou sacrifice herself. She's actively changing the timeline over and over and over again.
We're all, and she says we're all just ghosts to her. Pike and the people are all just ghosts to her. So she has been going back and forth, changing the timeline, trying to get it right. This is so she's living sort of a groundhog. This is how I took it anyway. That she's living sort of a Groundhog's Day type existence where she keeps jumping back to the future, then going back to the earliest point she needs to, making a change, and then living out that timeline, and then when she fails, inevitably, she jumps back to the future to just start over again. And that's super interesting, but yeah, you're right. I don't know what that means for canon. It would be almost strange if it doesn't change canon completely.
Well, we also have that quote from Spock that feels like it is directly talking to fans like us, more specifically to fans like you, who claim that it being out of sync with canon means that there are no stakes, because Spock says, now does matter. What happened before no longer exists. What happens next will not, what will happen next has not yet been written. We have only now. That is our greatest advantage. What we do now, here, in this moment, has the power to determine the future. Instinct and logic together. That is how we will defeat control in the battle to come. We will find a way all of history can change with our next move. He is trying to say, I feel like the writers are saying, no, there are stakes here, even if it goes back to the original canon, which it might, because they know that we're pissy like that.
That's interesting.
We need it to.
It's interesting that you took that line that way, because I did not read that as a message to the fans at all. I read that as purely, last week, what was it? You cannot make a road without walking it, or whatever. You can only make a path by walking it. I took that as another great therapy line. There is no past, there is no future. There's only now. You can only do what's now. I loved that line. That was my other quote. You took both my quotes already.
I'm sorry, man. But that it was a great quote. But when you look at it on a high level, and you look at that in conjunction with the fact that they have been saying all of this about syncing it back up with canon. You look at the way that Control has been using holograms to fool people. Well, that's a good reason to cut out holograms in the universe. And set that back. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think.
Yeah.
You have freaking Dr. Burnham over here going all Tully and Soren and talking about how time is a predator that stalks us all our lives and stuff. She didn't say it exactly like that, but it reminded me so much of it. I actually have it written down.
Yeah, totally.
Time is savage. It always wins. I was just wondering what you thought about that.
I don't know. I don't feel like that's what they're doing. But obviously it clearly could be. I totally see all your evidence you're laying out, and I think that it has a likelihood. There's something there, but I just don't think they're going to do some big reset to reset the canon. I just don't see it. I don't think they want to do that with this show. I think they want to make the show they want to make.
Well, either they're going to. I feel like they're either going to use this to reset it, or they're going to use it to explain why it's different.
Right.
I don't think there's a way around one of those happening.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, if it's a different canon, and I hate harping on canon, but if it's a different canon, then all the references to what happens to Pike and all that kind of stuff, it's does that happen to Pike? We don't know. This is a different universe, all the references that kind of seem to lead to where Spock is going, and trying to build out who Spock was as a child and his dyslexia and all this stuff leading to him being the man he becomes. All that stuff they're doing, to me, means nothing if you reset it all. It means nothing. The connections mean nothing because they're no longer connected.
Well, unless they are, you can still say there are fixed points in time.
Sure, you can Doctor Who that shit.
Absolutely. And you could, again, not a scientist, but you know what? Neither are they, clearly. And they could very well just throw some kind of bullshit technology or techno-babble reason in why everyone on Discovery, because they were at the heart of the event horizon or some bullshit, they remember how the timeline used to be. So Spock is still Spock.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
Yeah, no, I know. I do know.
I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying they could do it.
Yeah, they could. It does seem they're just taking huge swings. Still, everything they do on Discovery seems like it's taking huge swings, which I dig. In a lot of ways, I dig that.
What do you think about the Red Angel not knowing about the signals? What do you think about her mom not knowing what the signals are?
Oh, yeah, I'm really curious about that. So who is responsible for the signals?
A greater hand, man. Faith and science.
Maybe, or just a third party.
Yeah, probably that.
Well,
as Star Trek has taught us anything, it's that any higher party is really just a third hand that we weren't aware of.
Sure, that is. I mean, in a lot of ways, or it could be control.
It could be control.
It could be control trying to maybe it found a way to signal itself. It could be Burnham as a different form of time travel, going back, and later in the season we'll see her go back to all these events and watch her mother the way that she watched her all those years,
I am still convinced that Michael will be the Red Angel at some point. They have made too great of a point of bringing up the similarities between the mitochondrial DNA of her and her mother, and how is so similar, and then her mother later on in the episode points out to Georgiou that the suit is coded to her DNA. Yeah,
you're probably right. That's a good call with the DNA thing. That mitochondrial DNA bullshit at the beginning, which I know is true in real life, it just annoyed me that we can still tell now when DNA is different. We can tell a difference between a mother and a daughter's DNA because one has more of it, or one shares it with another parent. It's just real dumb. The whole thing where they said for sure this is Michael Burnham and then it wasn't really still annoys me. It's just the kind of thing where I don't like it when they break their own rules. You tell me a rule, then that's what I'm going to listen to. And if you break that rule, then your story means nothing to me. Yeah, and that really goes back to the whole reason that canon stuff bothers me. Every time you break canon, you're breaking your own rules.
So yeah, I am assuming that Michael will be the Red Angel at some point. I'm pretty sure I heard Leland say that he was confused because he said he saw her mother's body after that Klingon attack. So she's going to have to go back and get killed.
Interesting. Or Leland was lying because he knew that the Red Angel suit had disappeared. And
I'm
it was
not
top
sure.
Secret.
I don't think he was lying. He looked like he was telling the truth. He looked like he was surprised.
A couple things I still have in my notes here. How did the Red Angel save Burnham's life?
I don't know.
Is she a god? Because
how has she been omnipresent watching Michael without anyone noticing? Right.
All of that. What kind of powers does this suit have? Because suddenly she has some sort of cloaking, I guess, because she's watched over. I guess you could say she's far away using sensors to watch some of these things or something.
Well, she also said that she was communicating with Spock somehow, and
because
he was the only one who could hear.
Yeah, because of his unique
something?
dyslexia combined with his logic, combined with his humanity, which that's all a little fluffy for me. It was a weird look, your flaws make you special kind of moment. Which I get. I liked as an emotional beat, but from just a logical perspective, it seems like a lot of people could have had a conversation with her about this. Like any scientist from any other Star Trek show could have had that conversation with her and like got to where, yo, that's pretty trippy, but I get it.
It was also spectacularly head bludgeoning. Like they were just like,
yeah, you're right. My question was how she saved her. Like she blasts her with like red energy, and it just like wakes her up from dead. Mm-hmm. It just seems like her suit is like OP as hell. Or was, I guess. It looks like the core has been blasted out of it or something.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal with the suit is. I guess what did they say that she was blasted with? Tetrion radiation? Is that right?
Well, tachyon, I thought.
Maybe.
Or was it tetrion? I thought it was tachyon. I thought they were just saying she's been bathed in tachyon because of the time travel around her.
I thought they said tetrion, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I was just wondering if, like...
Which made-up energy did they say?
Well, tachyons are real.
Tachyons are real?
But, yeah, I don't...
Do you know that?
I mean, I thought so.
I've never heard of tachyons in a real context. I could be wrong. I don't know. I thought those were Star Trek thing.
Well, I mean... Yes.
Are you Googling are tachyons real right now?
No, I just typed in tachyons, and yes, they are real. They're they're a class of particles which are able to travel faster than the speed of light.
All right.
They were first proposed by physicist Arnold Sommerfeld and named by a different guy. Yeah, they're a thing.
Okay. Wasn't sure about that. Another line that kind of bothered me was Burnham comes out of her asleep or whatever at the beginning of the episode, and she is acting completely different from every Burnham scene I've ever seen her play. And I thought it was kind of genius. I thought it was beautiful, that scene. Mm-hmm. I said she was acting her ass off, and I mean it. Like, when she wakes up, because this is the thing, she has been stoic her entirety on this show. She has been trying to maintain her logical composure. Mm-hmm. And now she just met her mother, and she is freaked out, and she is emotional, and she is very strongly affected by it. And I just saw more humanity coming out in her, and a lot. And it was just like the lid had been blown off of her logic, and she was like letting all this humanity spill forth, and she was just not the Burnham I knew. Like I was sitting there literally thinking, man, this is a different side of this character we've never seen before. And it makes sense. I loved it. And then Spock walked in the room and said, "I see you're yourself again." And I was like, this is nothing like any Burnham we've ever seen. She's acting totally human. She's not trying to hold back her emotions at all. She's not trying to be logical. And then he walked in and just like, "I see you're being yourself again." I was like, that's a weird line. Right there.
I feel like you might be changing the context a little, because like she basically chose to do something irrational or something, and he was like, "I see you're yourself again." Like,
did she? What'd she choose to do that was irrational?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly what she said. She said something that it very much felt like. I thought it very much felt like she was like choosing to do, or because she was wanting to see her mother. I can't remember, man. I'm sorry, but I thought that was like,
that's true. Like
I don't think. I'm just saying. I don't think it was like he just came in and he was like, "You're acting like yourself again." I think it was like he came in. They had like a little conversation. She said she wanted to do something, or there was something that he was responding to something very specific, but.
I do not recall him responding to something very specific.
Didn't think I would have to defend the scene, so I didn't write it down.
I didn't. I'm not. It just like it stood out to me because of my own thoughts. I'm not saying that it was completely wrong or whatever. I don't know. It was just interesting to me because she was. To me, I was literally like, man. Hold on a second. Yeah, all she asks him is, "What did you find?" She's just being very emotional. And I thought it was just like totally different than, just different than her character that we've known up till now. And it was just weird. He says, "You woke sooner than expected." And she says, what did you find? He's like, I see you're yourself again. I guess maybe you're yourself could mean you're back to the task again. Like you're immediately working. Yeah. Could mean a few things. It just stood out to me because I was like, I don't think she's being herself at all. I think she's being incredibly emotional and different than she normally acts.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, here's a thing I won't defend that I in fact hated.
Let's see if I defend it.
Spock just going, I like science. Like, what is that about? Like,
yeah.
Because he's dyslexic or something that now he's acting like Rain Man? Like,
yeah.
Because that's not how that works.
I want to defend that because I did like. I like would have enjoyed it from almost any other character, but that's just not Spock's character at all. Like that's a real miss. That's almost as bad as say goodbye Spock or say hello Spock. Like it's almost as bad as the Telosians version of Spock from a few episodes ago. Like it's that bad of a mischaracterization of who Spock is to me.
Yeah, that felt like how like people who make slash fiction on Tumblr personify Spock.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the introverted cutesy Spock who says weird cutesy things like this. That's not what Spock does. Spock doesn't do that. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you want a slash fiction, that's fine. But he doesn't talk like that.
Yeah, I really am sad that I feel like we've been so hating on this show the last few episodes, because it's like in many ways it's been some of the best Star Trek in the sense that the acting is killer, the dialogue is killer, the special effects are great, the overall direction and tone of the show has been really great, but they just it's like they're not thinking it through. It's like they're just not thinking certain major things through at all, or intentionally leaving things vague so that we can just assume whatever we want, which is fine. That's better than a straight up flaw, but in the storytelling. But I don't know. It makes me sad because I really want to love it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to hate on it. I guess I enjoyed this episode.
I'm not trying to hate on it at all.
Yeah.
We just keep having lots of complaints and not a lot of that was amazing. You know, like there's a lot less. I feel like for the first few, even season 1, like there was a lot of things like, oh, that was amazing. You know, and I feel like I'm doing a lot more this season, especially since the new showrunners. Honestly, I'm doing a lot more. Ooh, that was rough. Than like in just enjoying it because it's great. You know.
Even when I get like scenes that I really enjoy, where it's like, you know, Dr. Burnham telling Georgiou, "No, I know who you are. I've seen you sacrifice yourself for my daughter." Blah blah blah. I'm still sitting there going like, "Great scene, great," but she still is a genocidal maniac who ate Saru.
Yeah. No, and I did love that scene. I really did, and I thought it was beautiful and poignant. And I even kind of like the idea that she's a villain that has a little bit of a heart. She's the Gul Dukat of this series. You know, she's a villain but she still loves her daughter. You know?
The difference is Gul Dukat with the Gul Dukat that was earned. And I don't feel like it has been with Georgiou. It was sort of like, well, she's kind of fun and snarky, so she's not genocidal anymore.
Well, see, no, I don't think that's it. I think because I don't think they've. I think everything they've shown on screen so far is very much like Gul Dukat, snarky, fun to watch, but still probably evil. But then has a certain spot in her heart for someone that she cares about, which gives her some humanity, and so you kind of want her to have redemption. But I think that's where the problem lies. You might get to the point now where you want her to have redemption, but the fact that the characters are treating her as if she's already been redeemed in their eyes, a lot of them. And the fact that they're not, like, I said this when she first showed up on the bridge, when the Emperor first showed up on the bridge at the end of season 1, I was like, I would not allow that. If I was any officer on that bridge that knew she was the Emperor, I would have stood up and said, "Hey, everyone, that's the Emperor. Our Federation is being infiltrated. We can't stand for this."
Mm-hmm.
And they should still be doing that. There's no reason they should be allowing her to be Section 31 at this point.
I agree, but one of the great things about that is like the fact that they were sort of going into a territory where we were like, well, see, this is how far Starfleet and the Federation have fallen. They're allowing this shit because they're in a rough spot. So, the ends justify the means in a lot of ways for Starfleet at this point. And showing that slippery slope. Now, if they are going to continue down the road of showing like, look, if they go as far as saying, look, the Borg were created because Section 31 is, X, Y, and Z, and look at our poor moral choices, that's great. But, I feel like this is sort of what they did last year, but to lesser effect. And, like, it was really cool last year when we were like, oh, well, they're in the middle of a war, and they have this, brilliant strategist who's in charge of their great ship Discovery who can do all this stuff. That's fine. But then, of course, Lorca turns out to be Mirror Universe, right? Yeah. So, okay, well, that's how they explain that away. Like, oh, well, he's not just a brilliant strategist. He was from the Mirror Universe. That's why he was a dick. It wasn't the Federation. And now we're dealing with, like, oh, this could actually be some serious issues with, like, the Federation and Starfleet's choices. Nope, it's control. That's problematic to me.
Yeah.
I would much rather, if you're going to bring in Section 31, if you're going to bring in, and they were teeing that up with Lorca last year, and then they're like, no, Mirror Universe. And now they're like, no, control. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. Are we going to deal with the Federation's lack of morality or, moral grayness, or are we just going to keep tacking it on to freaking cartoon villains?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Totally with you.
If you want to, ball up and do this thing, do it. Don't just, like, dip your toe in the shallow end and act like you talked about moral ambiguity.
Yeah. Nah, I'm totally with you. Like, and it's fine if you have characters that aren't morally ambiguous. That's fine, too.
Absolutely.
It's just, you gotta stand on one side, and you gotta allow your characters to have failings. They don't all have to be perfect. And you can let your ideals slip. Like, one of the best ways to prove the ideal is important is to show the consequences when it slips. But often they don't show consequences, Yeah,
I just sort of feel like they're like, well, this happened, so that's why. It's not that we are, and moral ambiguity got in the way of our progression as a species. Yeah, no. This happened. Well, okay. Well, lesson not learned then.
Our species has constantly gone through periods of enlightenment and periods of savagery. And, it's okay to me if the Federation has some periods of savagery, or at least some portions of the society that are going through savagery so that they can get back to the Enlightenment. Right. Sometimes generations have to learn lessons, We don't always learn our history like we should.
Well, there's a cycle. I don't believe in even from a storytelling perspective, like, I think one of the most unrealistic things about Star Trek is the purported Roddenberry humanism, where, like, suddenly we're all very evolved and no one ever is prejudiced or has conflict with each other. That's horseshit.
Right.
Is horseshit, and he couldn't even live up to it when he was writing the show himself. So
no, and we've gotten into it before, but I think that's all just Roddenberry believing his own press. People believed that about the show, and so he became the embodiment of that. The original series is a lot more cowboy. It's a lot more it's a lot more wagon train to the stars, and these people are having to, like, survive on their wits out on the frontier. It's not Now, Next Generation, that's a lot more of what you're talking about. That's a lot more of and it's sanitized, man. It's just like Joss Whedon says, sanitized for your protection.
Yeah, absolutely. Not that I don't enjoy a lot of it.
Oh, me too.
But yeah, I mean, the original series, like it, took almost nothing for like Kirk to have to grab a crewman and send him to his quarters or something, just because feelings. Yeah, it's like, I'm mad now. I'm on the bridge. No, you can't do that shit on the bridge. Get the hell off the bridge, man. Go ahead.
Or it took very little for him to break the rules or need to break the rules. And it's just it's weird because even on Next Generation, like we've talked about before, there's a number of times where there's the angry admiral who's doing something wrong, and our crew has to stand up to him. And they're not personifying it. It's real weird. It's weird the sort of inconsistent kind of rules they have about like just they basically just don't want their protagonists to be sullied.
Yeah.
And what year do you think you're making this show? Like Breaking Bad was one of the biggest shows on television in the last few years, in the last decade, and it's like Breaking Bad is about a protagonist who's all bad, Like it's okay to let your protagonist go through things. And about humanism, I do like the ideals of Star Trek that we could continue. Even the existence of the Federation, and the existence, the fact that we'll survive and that we'll make it to the stars, like all of that is optimistic and hopeful.
Is optimistic, is hopeful, is a lot of fun. And that's great, but I specifically said I'm not a Roddenberry humanist,
right? Which
I feel like is a different thing than just normal humanism. I'm still also not a humanist, but because I have no faith in humans,
right?
I'm a cynical shit, but
I just think that I do like the bent of Star Trek towards optimism, at least on a macro scale. But if you try to take that optimism and write it over every character, like and Discovery season 1 ended beautifully, and they're talking about how that crew exemplified the ideals of the Federation, and they did what they were supposed to do in the face of Lorca and great pressure from the upper, crest of the Federation to do genocide, and they stood up to it and thought of a third way of solving it. And it was a beautiful ending to that season 1. So we're still getting that on this show. But it doesn't mean your characters can't have some moral failings.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, you've used up all my quotes. You got any quotes?
I do. I really liked "You Won't Win." Leland said the same thing. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I really loved all of Dr. Burnham's. What would it be? A soliloquy?
Monologue.
All of her monologues, that's good. All of her monologues about time being fluid. It's a living thing that has gravity and will. It's savage, it always wins. People think time is fragile, precious, beautiful, sand in an hourglass, all that. But it's not. Time is savage, it always wins. It reminded me of Soren from Generations, which is a line that I always really liked. I always liked McDowell's, he was great in the movie. That movie's failings have nothing to do with Malcolm McDowell. But, time is a predator that stalks us all of our lives. You can try to outrun it with doctors, new technologies, but in the end, time will win, whatever it was that he said. It just reminded me of that a lot. I loved Georgiou telling Tyler, "What I'm about to tell you is the first real test of our relationship, Mr. Tyler. Betray me, and I'll live long enough to hunt you down and kill you slowly. Understood?" And he says, "I've been killed before, Georgiou. You're just telling me I'll have time to enjoy the scenery." Which is a nice little setup for the Section 31 series, I feel like.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I had was Spock's whole bit about, which I basically feel like is the writers telling us, calm down, this matters.
Right. It's interesting. I didn't take it that way at all. And like, let me be clear about like a canon and what matters. Like I've said before that
you certainly have.
You have to make me care. And I think this show has made me care, except when they're doing things that make no sense internally. Like it's not my problems with canon that make me not care about this show. It is problems with the particular episodes when something doesn't make sense, and I look at it and I'm like, I'm distracted. You're trying to make me emotional, and I'm distracted by the fact that you just did something without explaining. Why aren't they beaming off of the thing? You know, like this,
right?
Stuff like that. There was nothing that egregious in this episode, but
no.
But sometimes,
and I looked
like you got to pay attention to transporters existing. If you're on a Star Trek show, you just do.
And I do give it like leeway in like episodes of the original series before they realize like, oh, we're going to have shuttlecraft. Okay, cool. You guys didn't know.
Right.
I can headcanon something else, but you know, when it's all been established, and it's a little problematic.
You just need a throwaway line. You just got to write it tighter. It's just written sloppy as fuck.
And I personally, like I said, in this episode, I would have loved to have seen more of Dr. Burnham's journey.
Me too.
I would have loved, like, you know, like they had that entire whole episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I hate still keep going off of into other properties, but
yeah, I know.
There's this whole episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where we see like a character stranded on a planet across the galaxy.
We just see her perspective for that long. I would have loved this entire episode to be the events of this season, or even the events of her entire existence. Like maybe we see multiple iterations of some of this stuff. That's the other thing, is like they have those files now, I think.
Yeah, 841 entries in the data log. So
they can probably figure out a lot of what's coming, which will be interesting. I wonder how much they'll read those files and find out what's coming.
I wonder if they'll be like, oh, each one of these data entries it corresponds to a temporal coordinate that we can plug into the spore drive, and the Stamets can actually take us there.
Yeah. Temporal coordinates. I dig that.
Doesn't that sound like something they would do?
It does. It does. That's good. I like that. All right, you got any trivia?
Sure. The guy that played Michael Burnham's father was her actual husband.
Oh, neat.
That's creepy.
A little bit, but it's
daddy
neat.
Issues, y'all. Yeah. I think that's it. That's the only thing I had. Yeah. I did want to mention Dylan Diggs wrote us and says, guys, I'm a little late on my Discovery because I have a 3-week-old and sleep is back out of fashion in my life. I just wanted to write you all because this week I saw Discovery 208, if memory serves. This was easily my favorite Discovery episode and maybe one of my top 10 Star Trek episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Look, it might be my sleep deprivation, but this episode finally triggered all of the fanboy in me right from the start with the footage from the cage. I feel him on that. There have been some excellent episodes this season and some weak ones, but I agree. I finally felt the stakes for this season here. Furthermore, they might have best justified the potential of this series and the timeline by returning to Talos and revisiting this dynamic. The set, the sounds, the acting, the script. Loved it. Probably don't have anything particularly articulate to say about this, except if this is the way the new showrunner is taking the show, I'm buckled up and ready to go. P.S. I still miss Lorca, but damn it, I also love Pike. I hope at some point we have these two interacting. Section 31 hasn't matched the cynical side of the morality play that I think Lorca did, but it is interesting to think about the dichotomy between Season 1, Lorca's command, and Pike's current command. PPS, between this episode, Captain Marvel, we managed to get out of the house for this, and the in-game trailer, the fanboy in me is busting. Thanks for all you do to helping strengthen the enjoyment of the show. P.P.P.S. I forgot to mention, does anybody else notice that Pike looks and moves like Mitt Romney in space? I cannot unsee that.
Totally does. Totally does.
Why would you put that in my head?
Yeah. Why'd you do that to us, man? Oh, that's great. Well,
we haven't done a feedback
really
episode. Yeah. It was a very enjoyable episode.
Well, thank you for writing in, man.
Thank you, Dylan.
Totally with you on that being a really cool episode. And I'm really glad to hear someone still thinks we're adding to the enjoyment of the show.
That's nice.
It really is. Because I feel like these last 3 or 4 weeks, we have been a little. I've been more down than I want to be. Every time I turn it on, I want to love it. And every time there's things that are just glaring to me that I'm like, I just can't not complain about this. It's just I can't turn my brain off to just not worry about these things.
Well, I feel like we're a little better than the One Note fans who are still just complaining because this isn't Star Trek.
Oh yeah,
that's not an argument.
No, that's not an argument. And we're not complaining about. We're not complaining about the existence of Discovery. We're complaining about very specific problems that we have because we are giving it all the chances and we are trying to really enjoy it. Also, I'm watching If Memory Serves right now, and the Andorian looks super like one of the White Walkers from from Game of Thrones.
I don't even watch Game of Thrones, but I noticed that.
Yeah, he looks like that. I think it's the Night King. I think is the character's name. Anyway, not going to be able to unsee that either. So Mitt Romney versus Night King next time on the Star Trek Universe podcast. Peace.
Live long and prosper.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.